A very good day to each and every one. It is my absolute joy and great pleasure to welcome you all once again to Alna's Academy for part 9 of chapter 1, Reproduction in Lower and Higher Plants, class 12, Biology, revised syllabus 2020, which also covers NCERT Unit VI Chapter 2. And I am your facilitator Nusrat Siddiqui to help you and to guide you, having experience of more than 15 years in the field of teaching. Let's begin our video with yet another inspiring quote by William Durant. Education is a progressive discovery of our own ignorance. It means that we may be educated, but that doesn't mean that we have knowledge about everything. Knowledge about every new thing let us know. It helps us to know the level of ignorance in that particular area. Today we are going to discuss about outbreeding devices. Plants have many mechanisms and devices that they employ to promote cross-pollination. These are called as outbreeding devices. We know that adaptation in flower is different depending upon the agencies. If the pollinating agency is air, then pollens are lightweight. Pollen and stigma both are sticky, and if the pollinating agency is biotic, then there has to be something to attract living organism, be it bright color flower, the smell or the fragrance of the flower, there should be a nectar or some edible part, there should be something rewarding for the living organisms to be attracted towards the flower to promote or to help in cross-pollination. Let us understand the purpose of outbreeding devices. Many plants have mechanism that discourages or prevents self-pollination. Then it promotes cross-pollination. It also promotes cross-pollination to increase genetic diversity. Plants have evolved a wide variety of sexual strategies. Now, genetic diversity is an essential factor for evolution of species by natural selections. Continued self-pollination leads to inbreeding depression. Hence, to prevent inbreeding depression, the outbreeding devices helps in cross-pollination. Thus, plants have developed many devices to encourage cross-pollination, and the example of outbreeding devices are as follows. The first one we are going to study is unisexuality, which means dichogamy. It's a technical term, and in this case, plant bears either male or female flower. It is also called as dioism. As flowers are unisexual, so self-pollination will not be possible. Plant may be monoecious. So in monoecious, the male and the female flowers are there on the same plant, but they are separate. Example is maize. In such type, there is a possibility of Dichogamy. And another type of plant will be Dioecious plant. Example, mulberry, papaya. Over here, the female flower, which is called as pistillate, is on a separate plant, and the male flower, which is called as staminate, is on a separate plant. So the male flower is on a separate plant, the female flower is on a separate plant, and such type of plants are called as dioecious plant. Example is papaya. I have explained this in detail in my previous video about when we were discussing about the basic adaptation in the flower to promote cross-pollination. The next device which we are going to study is dichogamy. In this device, the anther and the stigma, they matures at different times in a bisexual flower so as to prevent self-pollination. It can be further divided into two types. The first one is protandry. Protandry means, pro means before, andry means androecium. That means what? Androecium matures earlier than the gynoecium. That is, the pollen grains will be formed first. So when pollen grains are formed and that pollen falls on the stigma of the same flower, egg is not formed as yet, and hence self-pollination will not take place. Example is dischlorate of sunflower, cotton and okra. These are the example of protandry. The second type is Protogyny. Pro again means before, gyne means gynoecium. So over here the gynoecium matures earlier than the androecium. Means egg is formed first and pollen grains are not ready. So the egg has to depend on the pollen of the other flower of the same species for pollinations. Example is Mirabilis jalpa, castor apple. Now we are going to study about heterostyly or heteromorphy. Over here the stigma and the anthers, they are placed at different levels and it is termed as heterostyly or heteroanthy. Heterostyly because this length of the style is different. Heteroanthy, the length of anther is different because anther is attached either to the short filament or to the long filament, and this type of arrangement prevents the pollens from reaching the stigma and pollinating it. Thus it prevents self-pollination. Example is primrose. In primrose there are two forms of flower. The one form is where the style is long and the filament to which the anther are attached are short. So this is termed as long style and it is called as pin flower. The second type is where the style is short whereas the anthers are attached to long filament. It is termed as short style and name of the flower is Thrum flower. So these are the two types of flower in primrose, whereas in oxalis there are three types of flower. The first type is pin flower, Thrum flower, and the other type is normal flower. Now over here the length of the style and the filament are appropriate to each other, and this is an example of oxalis. And in heteromorphic flowers, pollen grains produced from the anther will pollinate the stigma produced at the same level. So in this type of flower, that is normal flower of oxalis, there is a possibility of self-pollination, whereas in pin flower and thumb flower only cross-pollination will take place. Next is prepotency. In this, different flower pollen of the same species will germinate first, and same flower pollen will germinate only to ensure fertilization. That's the reason why it is termed as prepotency. Example is apple and peach. Now what does this mean? It means that if two different pollens are fallen on the stigma, so if two different pollen, now this is of the same flower and this pollen is of the different flower but of the same species, then this pollen will germinate first. Okay, this pollen will germinate first, and if this different flower pollen doesn't fall onto the stigma, then given this scenario the same flower pollen will germinate only to ensure fertilization. So this is known as prepotency. So first preference is given to the pollen of the flower which is from the different plant of the same species. If that flower pollen doesn't fall onto the stigma, then the same flower pollen will germinate just to ensure fertilization. Next is self-incompatibility or self-sterility. It's a genetic mechanism due to which germination of the pollen on the stigma of the same flower is inhibited. Means same flower pollen will not germinate. Now different flower pollen of the same species doesn't fall onto the stigma. So over here you can see a different flower pollen of the same species, but it is not falling onto the stigma. But same flower pollen has fallen onto the stigma. Still the same flower pollen will not germinate, and this is an example of tobacco. So over here this results in the self-incompatibility or self-sterility, and cross-pollination is the only means of pollination in such plants. Now let us study about Herkogamy. It is a mechanical device to prevent self-pollination in bisexual flower. In plants, there is a natural physical barrier which is present between two sex organs, that is androecium and gynoecium, and sometimes the petals do act as a barrier between the androecium and the gynoecium. So presence of physical barrier between pollen and stigma. So this physical barrier between pollen and stigma of the same flower can be achieved by enclosing the pollens into a bag-like structure called as Pollinia. Pollinia is plural and singular is pollenium. So in Pollinia the pollens are enclosed. Example is Calotropis pentangula. So over here the structure which you see is a Pollinia structure, and inside Pollinia the pollen grains are enclosed. So Pollinia is a bag-like structure enclosing the pollen grains. So it acts as a barrier. So this Pollinia, it acts as a barrier. So even if there is a contact between the stigma and the Pollinia, still the pollens are not in contact with the stigma because they are inside the Pollinia. Hence, self-pollination will not take place in this case. These pollinia, they are carried by the wind, and over the period of time the membrane degenerates, releasing the pollen, and this pollen then comes in contact with the stigma of another flower of the same species, and then it will germinate. Next is suppression of one sex organ. That means flower is bisexual, but one sex organ matures, the other will become non-functional. This means that if anther matures, then ovary will become non-functional, and if ovary matures, then anther will become non-functional, and hence self-pollination is not possible in suppression of one sex organ. Let us do a quick recap as to what we have studied in this video. We have studied about unisexuality, which means dichogamy, means monoecious and dioecious plant. Then we have discussed about dichogamy, means male and female part matures at different times so as to prevent self-pollination. We have also discussed about heterostyly, where the length of the style varies. In prepotency, it allows the pollen from the different flowers to germinate first. Then in self-compatibility, the pollen of the same flower will just not germinate. In Herkogamy, there is a physical barrier between pollen and stigma to prevent self-pollination. Suppression of one sex organ means if anther matures, the ovary becomes non-functional, and if ovary matures, the anther becomes non-functional. This is what we have studied in this particular video. Thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions, do write to me at alnazacademyofficial@gmail.com. So till we meet next time, stay safe, stay positive. Do like, subscribe and share this video with your friends so that they may also benefit. Our entire playlist will be uploaded soon. So till then, take care, bye bye, thank you and happy learning.